You're listening to the Name Drop Podcast, the brainchild of Indie Consulting, a full-service marketing partner. We are here to reveal the industry experts and brilliant founders behind the marketing campaigns and brands you know and love. In a world where things change fast and marketing is the opposite of static, we are here with a behind-the-scenes look on marketing geniuses and how they find their inspiration, hoping to inspire you along the way. Hi guys, thanks for tuning in today. We're going to be doing something a little bit different with our episode today. We are doing my first solo episode, which hopefully will be interesting and a good journey for us. Wanted to give a little bit of background on the story of Indie, how we got to where we are today, and in light of our 6th birthday, a few things that I've learned over the past year. So I think with Indie, some people listening might know how we got started and what our origin story but wanted to share with you guys just some context on how we've grown this company over the past 6 years, which is really hard to believe, honestly, that it's been 6 whole years. My career prior to starting Indie was 6 years, so it's crazy now to think that I've been doing this for as long as I was working for other businesses in the past. I had spent some time prior to starting Indie on the agency side and then in-house at a brand. I left my brand job in, fall of 2018. So definitely a different time. It feels like the world has changed a lot since then. And after spending some time agency side and then spending some time in-house, I was just feeling the need and desire to really shake things up. And I left my corporate job and actually didn't have a plan for what was going to be next, which, if you know my personality, is not the norm. I'm like planner extraordinaire. I always have a plan of what's going to happen next. And I was at this moment in my career, and I guess life too, to some extent, where I didn't know what the next step was. I had this lots of soul searching time and was waiting and holding off on quitting my job until I figured it out, and finally got the push from my mom actually to just leave and that I would figure it out from there. So left that job and was thinking about everything from, do I go work at one of the big 4? Do I move to Seattle and take this job at Amazon? Do I go to Europe and lead a bike tour? I mean, we were really looking at all of the options. The bike tour was the least popular of the options, to be honest, but it could have been fun. So all that being said, I took on some consulting roles, some freelance roles while I was trying to figure it out, and really felt so much more energized in those roles. I felt like part of me was wondering if I even wanted to do marketing anymore. And when I started freelance consulting, I was reminded just of how much I love this space. And I think what I was really missing in my corporate job was freedom and autonomy and the ability to really create and build something versus, coming into an in-house role and sort of fitting into the mold of what has already been developed. So when I started doing the consulting work, I was doing digital strategy, and it felt to me like that was an opportunity that I could bring to the table and build it to be something more than myself. So I always wanted to start a company. It was something that I had thought about since I was a kid. I loved making my own money and creating and building and figuring out how to sell those services or product. I thought that my future entrepreneurial life would be this brilliant product idea that just popped into my head one day, and I would be forced to invent it and just create this thing, and that would be my business. And I was at an interesting inflection point where it felt like there was an opportunity to create a service-focused business model, which was never really what I thought I would be doing, but the opportunity was there. So all that being said, when I had been doing my freelance consulting role, I started thinking, well, how could I really turn this into a marketable service moving forward? And what would it look like if I built it beyond myself? And started thinking about creating a strategy led agency, and we actually didn't want to be an agency at the time, which is why Indie is called Indie Consulting. So how do we create a new model that would be this hybrid between a consultancy and an agency that would be able to come in and really play that strategic role for brands and help them either figure out what to do with their marketing or how to activate their marketing strategically. So that was sort of the initial thought. And along with that, we really wanted to do something different, or I really wanted to do something different when it came to the actual client services. I think at the time, agency was almost a dirty word. People didn't like their agencies. People didn't want to necessarily work at agencies. So a focus of Indie in its early days was also to bring some intimacy back into client services and really focus on building relationships and leading with empathy and figuring out how we best connect with the different clients that we work with, instead of just showing up as their marketing partner and jumping on a client call once a week. What would it look like to really have deeper connectivity into their teams and brands and business goals so that we could be a true partner, not just a third party that helps them with things. So I had this initial 1-page document sell sheet of what we are offering, and I started putting that out there. And I mean, for anyone that started a business, it's terrifying doing that. You're like, are people going to laugh at me? Are people going to think I'm crazy? What skills do I really have that would make it possible for me to do this in a way that's better than thousands of other marketing partners out there that are doing something similar? And really kind of working through that fear was a big part of the early days. And my goal was to work on my own for as long as it took me to feel comfortable with that idea, and also to understand what a business model could look like before I brought anyone else into the picture. So, for the first 14 months, this was like a mini MBA, and it was an absolute grind in the best way possible. But I was trying to figure out how to create my own scopes, my own invoices, my own budget tracker. How would I forecast? How would I create a website? What would the brand be like for the agency or for the consultancy? And it was really a solo mission, and something that, looking back on, was hard, but also so freeing in so many ways. It was just this really exciting and interesting time to be able to build something, take an idea, and then see what you could do with it and how you could bring it to life. So, the name Indie was something that I struggled a lot with. I initially opened an LLC with a completely different name and was trying to figure out what the best name for the business could be for months. And I wanted two things. I wanted it to be 2 syllables, because otherwise people get confused and they forget. And something that could be brandable, right? At the time, there were so many agencies like Jellyfish. It's okay, random. So I was trying to kind of avoid that path, but I was calling, at the time, to a friend of mine, I was calling the concept of this business the Indie Collective, because I had this idea that I would bring different marketing experts into the group to work on projects, and so that we could be something greater as a team than what we could be independently. But I really wanted people to still have accountability, autonomy, freedom to live their lives the way they wanted to live their lives, versus coming into a model and then kind of force-fitting what their role or career goals should look like. And I was at dinner with this friend, and he was like, why don't you just call the business Indie? You already call it that, and it seems natural. And sometimes the most obvious things just are staring at you in the face, but you just have to open your eyes to see them. So that was the start of Indie. We hired our first employee in January of 2020. And, the 14 months of really doing it solo and being a solopreneur is something that I'm so glad I did. And I don't know if I would ever do it again, to be honest, but it was great. So anyway, today we are a team of about 20 core indie team members, mostly based between Raleigh and New York City. We also have about 10 contractors working up to 30 hours a week right now, and they come to us from all over the world, not even just the country, which is super exciting. And I just feel super grateful to be able to work with such amazing individuals that get to come together on behalf of the awesome clients and projects that we have. So as we enter our 6th year of business, I, try to reflect each year on what things I've learned in the year that has passed. And I think Indie has been such an introspective experience for me as a human in ways that I could have never predicted or imagined. Building something and creating a business really forces you to look at yourself and what aspects of you do you have to change and work on so that your output is stronger and your relationships are stronger and your leadership is stronger. And so I think I've grown more in the past 6 years than I had in my career prior to date. And I'm super lucky to be able to have had that experience. So I think, over the past year, a few things have really stood out to me. I really want us to continue to lean into strategy as our core offering, and that I think that there's value in marketing strategy that is not being fully recognized today, or maybe perhaps can sometimes be underutilized. In the world of marketing currently, just the volume of options that we have for how to go to market, how to reach customers, how to drive customers to a point of purchase, it's pure option paralysis. There's so many different ways that you can go about spending your marketing dollars, reaching people, connecting with people, and hopefully leading them to a purchase at some point. And today, I think more than ever before, a strategy is worth every dollar that is invested into it, because if you don't do that thinking up front and you don't consider all of your options and build data points and conviction behind why you're doing what you're doing, your executions are going to fall flat every time. And then you're going to have to go back to the drawing board and redo them. So I think, from the most simplistic point, marketing strategy and having people that really know all the options that are available to you and how to bring your business goals to life through your marketing plans and activations is just more critical than it ever has been before. I think strategy is hard to sell and it's hard to explain, but ultimately to me, strategy is a plan that brings to life a path to activation that will get you the results that you're looking to achieve. And it requires system thinking. It requires adaptability and agility to make changes if things aren't working. And it requires confidence and conviction. I think going into something and saying, hey, I really think this is the best path forward. And of course, we all reserve the right to change our minds later, but that type of approach is what I think makes a strategy effective. So, whether the strategy is always correct or not, is another thing. And I think we have to be honest with ourselves about when things aren't working, just as much as we are honest about when they are working. And the beautiful thing about digital marketing specifically, but I think now just marketing at large, is we can pretty much always make changes if things aren't working. So as long as there's enough trust between the teams that are partnering on some of these things, we can make things better and hopefully drive results. So the second thing that I learned over the past year is probably around leadership. I think so often leadership is used in this ambiguous way of, just be a better leader. And I can't even count how many times in my career prior to starting Indie that I got feedback like that of, you're a great marketer and we just want you to be more of a leader. And I would ask follow-up questions and not really get feedback as to what that meant. I think to me, the most tangible form of leadership in my past was, being the captain of my cross country team. It's like, okay, I know what to do. I make sure that everyone feels prepped for the race, and we spend some time connecting after the race, and we show up on time for practice. And there's simplicity around that type of leadership role. And when it comes to leading a team or a business and growing as a leader, I think that's where things get a lot stickier, from the sense of, again, there's just so many different ways to be a leader and paths you can take as you develop your leadership style, especially as you continue to progress in your career. So I think now, to me, when I think about leadership, I think about three things. I think first and foremost, a good leader, I think, has to have really brutal self-awareness. I think you have to know your weak spots and your blind spots as much as possible. I mean, there's always going to be things that we don't know. That's natural. But doing the work on yourself so that you can really start to figure out what areas you have to improve on is critical. I think you can only be a better leader for the people around you if you can improve yourself so that you're showing up in a better way for them. So that extreme accountability is something that I take very seriously, and I try to be really honest about when I've messed up or I didn't show up in the best way possible, because it happens to all of us. But I think showcasing that you're aware of when it's happening and then you try to do better next time is all that we can ask from people. The second piece on leadership is this concept of staying above the line. There's a book called, I think, Conscious Leadership, and it talks about this theory of being an above the line leader or being a below the line leader. And when you're above the line, you're thoughtful and intentional and non-reactive and open-minded, and you come into situations and listen first and take a beat before asserting yourself. And when you're a below the line leader, you're emotion-led, you're reactive, you're closed-minded, you enter a situation and you just give your immediate feedback, give your first thought that comes to your brain. Maybe you just aren't having a good day and you're not even patient enough to hear what the situation is that you're walking into. And I try to remind myself as much as possible to really do a gut check of, okay, am I coming into this being above the line or am I below the line? And again, like with the self-awareness, we're always going to be below the line sometimes. There might be crazy things happening in life, or you're just having a bad day and you're showing up to a situation closed. But as much as you can think about that idea of like, where am I? If there's a line, where do I sit? Am I above it? Am I below it? That to me is one of the most tangible definitions of leadership that I've ever come across, and is something that I think about a lot. And then thirdly, I think clarity and adaptability is so critical for being a good leader. I think you have to have clarity on what you're leading people towards. People aren't going to follow you if they don't know where you're headed. So as simple as like using the analogy of like going on a hike, if you don't tell people, yeah, we're actually trying to climb to the top of this mountain, it's going to be a much different experience. So I loved using with my team, like we're on this road trip of growth, right? Like we're trying to drive cross country and we might detour in Chicago, or we might end up in like a weird part of Kansas sometimes. Like those, ultimately we're trying to get from New York to LA, and eventually we'll get to LA, but there might be different turns along the way, but at least we know where we're going, and being really clear about what LA looks like. You know, what goals do we have from a financial perspective, from a cultural perspective, from a marketing expertise perspective, from a purpose and pro bono perspective. Being crystal clear about what those things are, I think, is so important. And then being adaptable and how you get to that place. I think oftentimes leaders expect to lead in their style and then have people just accommodate their style and mold to how they like to communicate and problem solve and interact. And I think that a good leader will learn to adapt to different styles and different personalities and different ways of communicating and problem solving so that you can really meet people where they're at and hopefully bring them along with you. So to me, those three things are key and critical right now. I'm sure they'll change as leadership is a very fluid thing from my perspective, but those three pieces have been really helpful to me over the course of the past year. Finally, third learning from year 6 would be, I guess, advice specifically to female entrepreneurs. I learned a stat recently that there are 20,000 marketing agencies, agency defined as like a marketing service partner of any size in North America. And of those 20,000 agencies, only 1% of them are owned by women. And I'm not I want to lead with the fact that we are a women-owned business. That's not my bit typically. However, it is that stat, it has sat with me in such a way over the past couple of months since I learned it, because this is a mostly women-led workforce when you look at the marketing workforce, and only 1% of them are in ownership positions. That's crazy. That's just crazy. And you have to wonder why that is, and how do we increase that? Because if women are working in this field, they should have equal opportunity to ownership as well, I think. So I think as I've thought a lot through the reasons why and what might be happening to get us to that place, I feel like I've noticed a lot in my career, and even more so recently, probably because I'm paying more attention, that women tend to cap themselves before they even get started. And maybe this isn't even a female-specific thing. I think a lot of people do this, where before they take the risk to go for the next promotion or to go for the new role, or to really put themselves out there and start their own business, they think through all the reasons why they might not want to do that in the future, right? I might want to spend more time with my partner. I might want to have kids. I might want to not work that hard. And it's like you're cutting yourself off before you've even given yourself the opportunity to give it a shot. And I think because of the hats that women wear and the roles that they play, that I see this a lot, especially with women, where they put a cap on their potential before they even get started, in the case that they might change their mind later. And I think that my advice would be to go for it. If you have an idea, if you have a way to make money, because that is important, this is a job, and you have energy around it, you should go for it. And if it turns out that you don't like it, or you want to prioritize other things in your life, then you can make that decision to change it. We're not stuck or cemented in the decisions that we make. Pretty much everything can be changed, except for maybe a few exceptions that I won't get into right now. But most things can change. And I think sometimes we're so afraid of that. We have such fear around making a change that we don't even go for things because of the what ifs in the future. So I think, not capping yourself before you've even gotten started is so critical, because you never know where life's going to take you. And even if it isn't something that you do for 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, it's going to bring you down a different path. And that, I think, is the most important piece. So these are my key learnings over the past year. I think, I conclude in the past what has been blogs, because that has been the medium to date of these sort of reflection moments, with just extreme gratitude. I have such amazing people in my life that have helped make Indie what it is today. I have an incredible team that help make me better every single day, and that is more than I could have ever asked for. I have incredible clients that I feel really privileged to work with, and just they make us smarter and expose us to new things. And the trust that comes with letting someone into your business is not something that I take lightly. So I am so grateful for that. And then probably most unrecognized, there are always the tertiary people that support someone who's trying to build a business that don't get called out very often, whether it be my friends or my family or my husband who has to hear about me rambling about God knows what, everything on a daily basis. That support means so much. And I truly wouldn't, this isn't a solo job. This takes a community and a network and just amazing people to be able to continue to build something hopefully as awesome as what we're building. So this is a roller coaster, just like probably every entrepreneur feels. The highs are high and the lows are low. And as much as you can sort of stabilize against those things, you're along for the journey and be along for the journey. I think that's probably the most beautiful part of it is, like, I often find myself thinking, what part of this am I going to look back on one day and think, oh, those were like the glory days, right? And honestly, those times are probably now, which is kind of crazy to think about. Not that there won't be incredible times in the future, but there's something really beautiful about being the size that we are and having the energy that we have and the momentum and being present enough to acknowledge that and hopefully just enjoy it takes intentionality, but is something that I'm always trying to work on. So with that, I hope you guys enjoyed this solo episode. Thanks for listening to Name Drop. This has been our baby this year, a really test case to see if we can bring thought leadership to life in a different way. I have no idea who's going to listen to this, but we always welcome feedback if you have any. And give us 5 stars. Go to Spotify, choose a rating, choose 5. We'll love you forever. And yeah, thanks for tuning in. All right, so you guys can find us on Instagram at namedrop.pod, and I'm at Mal Bakes. Thanks so much.